They told you that hard work would set you free, that grinding yourself into dust would somehow elevate you above the masses, that virtue and effort alone would carve your name into the halls of power. Yet here you stand, watching those who work less rise higher, wondering why the promise feels like a cruel jest whispered by voices that benefit from your exhaustion. The truth Machiavelli understood centuries ago remains concealed behind platitudes and moral theater, buried beneath layers of social conditioning designed to keep you running on a wheel that others control. What if the game was never about how hard you work, but about understanding the invisible architecture of power itself? What if your devotion to labor has been the very chain preventing your ascension, while others who grasp the true mechanics of influence move effortlessly through doors you cannot even see? The prince does not toil in the fields, yet the harvest bears his name, and this distinction reveals everything they hoped you would never comprehend. There exists a realm of understanding that separates those who command from those who serve, and it has nothing to do with moral superiority or industrious dedication. Machiavelli observed that power flows not to the most deserving, but to those who understand its nature, who see through the theatrical performances society mistakes for reality. While you perfect your craft in isolation, others cultivate relationships, manipulate perceptions, and position themselves strategically in the corridors where decisions are made. They attend the gatherings you consider frivolous. They master the social arts you dismiss as superficial. They understand that power is a performance witnessed by others, not a virtue practiced in solitude. The blacksmith who forges the finest sword may die poor, while the merchant who sells inferior blades grows wealthy. And this disparity reveals a fundamental truth about how the world actually operates beneath its moral pretensions. Consider how exhaustion has become a badge of honor in modern society, how suffering is repackaged as virtue, how your willingness to sacrifice health, relationships, and sanity is praised while secretly serving agendas that are not your own. The powerful have always understood what Machiavelli articulated with brutal clarity, that appearances matter more than reality, that perception shapes fortune more than substance ever could. They work to be seen working. They cultivate images of competence while delegating actual labor. They understand that reputation is currency and visibility is power. Meanwhile, you labor in obscurity, believing that quality will somehow advertise itself, that merit will naturally rise, that the universe operates on principles of fairness that exist nowhere except in stories told to children and fools. The discomfort you feel when confronting this reality is not accidental, but intentional, designed into the system by those who benefit from your ignorance. They need you to believe in hard work because your belief sustains their comfort, your grinding feeds their leisure, your acceptance of meritocracy allows them to sleep soundly while inequity compounds. Machiavelli stripped away these comfortable illusions not from cynicism but from compassion, offering those with eyes to see a map of territory that remains deliberately obscured. He revealed that the prince must learn to be both fox and lion, that cunning matters as much as strength, that understanding the game is infinitely more valuable than simply playing your assigned role with dedicated fervor. The question burning before you now is whether you possess the courage to see what he saw, to abandon the comforting myths that have governed your choices, to step into a more complex and ultimately more liberating understanding of how power actually moves through the world. What follows is not a comfortable journey, but a necessary one, not a validation of what you hope is true, but an exploration of what demonstrably is true, regardless of how it makes you feel. Machiavelli offers no false hope, no gentle lies, no reassurance that the universe bends toward justice, or that your suffering has inherent meaning. He offers instead something more valuable, a clear-eyed assessment of the mechanisms by which some rise and others remain trapped, a strategic framework for navigating a world that operates on principles very different from those you were taught to believe. The choice before you is stark and unavoidable: to continue playing a game whose rules were written to ensure your perpetual servitude, or to learn the actual rules that govern success, influence, and power in a world that rewards understanding over effort, strategy over sacrifice, and awareness over blind dedication to labor. The foundation of your entrapment begins with a single poisonous belief: that labor itself possesses intrinsic nobility, that sweat somehow sanctifies the laborer, that hours invested translate directly into value received. Machiavelli would recognize this as precisely the kind of moral fiction that princes encourage in their subjects while privately living by entirely different principles. The powerful understand that value is not determined by effort, but by scarcity, positioning, and perceived necessity. A man who digs ditches for 12 hours creates less value than one who makes a single decision that redirects capital, not because the decision requires more effort, but because it sits at a higher leverage point in the system. The world does not compensate struggle but results, and those results depend far more on where you stand than how hard you work once you arrive there. This delusion of effort-based worthiness serves specific interests that are not your own. When you internalize the belief that hard work alone determines outcomes, you absolve systems of their structural advantages. You blame yourself for positions that were never truly available. You exhaust yourself chasing prizes that were never meant for your hands. The factory owner needs you to believe that your poverty stems from insufficient dedication rather than systemic extraction. The corporate executive requires your conviction that their wealth reflects superior work ethic rather than inherited advantage and strategic positioning. Machiavelli observed that rulers maintain power not primarily through force, but through the manipulation of belief systems that make subjects complicit in their own subordination. Your worship of hard work is not a virtue you discovered, but a value that was installed in you, carefully cultivated by those who benefit from your tireless spinning. The actual mechanics of advancement operate on principles that hard workers actively avoid confronting, because doing so would shatter their sense of moral superiority. Machiavelli noted that the prince must be willing to act contrary to faith, contrary to charity, contrary to humanity, contrary to religion, in order to maintain his state. This does not mean becoming evil, but rather recognizing that success in the political realm, which includes all human organizations and hierarchies, requires strategies that Sunday school morality does not acknowledge. While you perfect your technical skills in isolation, others are building alliances, trading favors, positioning themselves in the paths of opportunity, understanding that who knows your name matters more than what you can do. The skilled craftsman who remains unknown dies poor, while the mediocre one with powerful friends rises to prominence. And this pattern repeats across every domain of human activity with such consistency that only deliberate blindness can ignore it. Consider how the discourse around hard work never examines who benefits from your exhaustion. When productivity increases but wages stagnate, when technology eliminates labor but working hours expand, when corporate profits soar while workers are told to be grateful for employment, you are witnessing Machiavellian principles in action, deployed by those who understand them against those who do not. The powerful have always grasped that the appearance of fairness matters more than actual fairness, that systems which seem meritocratic can be more effective at maintaining hierarchy than openly tyrannical ones. They encourage your belief in hard work because it keeps you focused downward on your own efforts rather than upward at the structural arrangements that determine distribution. Machiavelli would recognize this as masterful statecraft, convincing the governed that their position reflects personal failure rather than systemic design. The psychological trap tightens through social comparison and status anxiety, mechanisms that Machiavelli understood intuitively. When you see others succeeding, you instinctively assume they worked harder or possess superior qualities, because accepting that they simply played a different game or started from different positions threatens your entire worldview. This assumption drives you to work even harder, to sacrifice even more, to believe that the next level of dedication will finally produce the promised results. Meanwhile, those who understand the actual dynamics are not working harder, but working differently, not proving their worth through labor, but demonstrating their value through visibility, connection, and strategic positioning. They attend the conference not to learn, but to be seen. They write the book not to share knowledge, but to establish authority. They understand that in a world of abundant competence, differentiation comes from factors that have nothing to do with how many hours you suffer. The cruelest aspect of this trap is how it turns your greatest strength into your fundamental weakness. Your capacity for sustained effort, your willingness to delay gratification, your ability to endure discomfort, all these qualities that should advantage you instead become the mechanism of your exploitation. Machiavelli observed that good men come to ruin among the great majority who are not good. And your goodness in this context is your willingness to play by rules that others have already abandoned. You take pride in your work ethic, while others take pride in their results. You measure yourself by inputs, while they measure themselves by outcomes. You believe that suffering builds character, while they understand that suffering often just builds more suffering. The game continues because players like you validate it, believing that your eventual victory will justify the system, never recognizing that the system was designed to ensure that you remained forever one promotion away from satisfaction. The liberation that Machiavelli offers is not cynicism but clarity, not an abandonment of effort, but a redirection of it towards strategies that actually produce the outcomes you desire. He invites you to see that virtue and vice are not fixed categories, but situational tools, that what appears as corruption to the naive often functions as necessary adaptation to those who understand how power actually moves. The question is not whether you will work hard, but whether you will work strategically, not whether you possess skills, but whether you position those skills where they can be recognized and rewarded, not whether you deserve success, but whether you understand what success actually requires in a world that operates on principles very different from those preached in its moral literature. The architecture of modern work culture reveals itself as fundamentally Machiavellian once you possess the framework to decode it, a system of appearances maintained through ritualized performances that benefit those who recognize them as theater. Consider how organizations reward visibility over substance, how the person who stays late and sends emails at midnight receives recognition regardless of actual productivity, how presence signals commitment in ways that results somehow do not. Machiavelli understood that princes maintain power through spectacle and symbol, that the appearance of strength matters more than its reality, that perception shapes political outcomes more than underlying truth. Your workplace operates on identical principles, rewarding those who master the performance of productivity, while often penalizing those who simply produce without adequate self-promotion. This dynamic creates a perverse incentive structure, where the rational strategy involves investing energy into visibility rather than capability, into networking rather than mastery, into politics rather than production. The employee who spends 3 hours perfecting a presentation that takes 30 minutes to deliver understands something that the one who spends 8 hours solving actual problems does not, that outcomes are judged by audiences who lack the expertise or interest to evaluate substance. Machiavelli noted that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because it belongs to everybody, to see you, but too few to come in touch with you. The worker who produces excellent results in obscurity loses to the one who produces mediocre results with excellent marketing. Not because the system is broken, but because it is working exactly as designed by those who understand its true mechanics. The trap deepens when you internalize the belief that this dynamic represents corruption rather than simply reality, that things should operate differently even though they demonstrably do not. This moral stance feels virtuous, but functionally ensures your continued disadvantage, as you refuse to compete in the actual game while insisting that a different game ought to exist. Machiavelli's core insight was that effective action requires accepting the world as it is rather than as we wish it to be, that morality divorced from practical consequence becomes mere sentiment. The question is not whether workplace politics should matter, but whether you will learn to navigate them. Not whether visibility should determine advancement, but whether you will make yourself visible. Not whether the system is fair, but whether you will succeed within the system that actually exists. Those who rise understand intuitively what Machiavelli articulated explicitly, that power flows through relationships and that relationships require cultivation through strategies that pure meritocracy never acknowledges. They have coffee with the right people, not because they enjoy small talk, but because decisions get made in informal settings. They volunteer for visible projects, not because they care about the work, but because exposure to senior leadership matters more than the project's success. They understand that every interaction is an opportunity to shape perception and build alliances. Meanwhile, you remain at your desk perfecting deliverables, believing that quality will somehow advertise itself, that your manager naturally tracks your contributions, that the organization operates with perfect information about who produces what value. This belief is not naive innocence, but strategic blindness, a refusal to see what remains plainly visible, because seeing it would require abandoning the moral framework that makes you feel superior to those who play the game you pretend does not exist. The meritocracy myth persists because it serves multiple constituencies simultaneously, offering workers the hope that effort determines outcomes while providing organizations moral cover for structurally predetermined results. Machiavelli would recognize this as brilliant political engineering, a system that produces compliance through internalized belief rather than external force. When you fail to advance, despite exceptional work, you blame yourself rather than the system. You work harder rather than differently. You remain psychologically invested in an arrangement that exploits your investment. The genius of this trap is how it turns your strengths against you, how your capacity for self-criticism becomes the mechanism preventing you from seeing that the game was rigged from the beginning, how your belief in justice makes you complicit in injustice. Consider how the language of work culture reveals these dynamics to those trained to see them. When organizations speak of passion and mission, they are soliciting unpaid emotional labor. When they emphasize culture fit, they are filtering for those who will not challenge existing power arrangements. When they celebrate hard work, they are encouraging you to mistake exhaustion for accomplishment. Machiavelli understood that language functions as a tool of power, that those who control definitions control reality, that the words used to describe situations shape how people think about and respond to them. The fact that you were taught to hear these phrases as inspiring rather than manipulative demonstrates how thoroughly the system has colonized your consciousness, how completely you have internalized values that serve interests opposed to your own. The path forward requires what Machiavelli called virtù, not virtue in the moral sense, but a kind of pragmatic excellence that adapts to circumstances rather than insisting circumstances adapt to principles. This means learning to play the visibility game while maintaining your standards of quality, understanding that both matter but in different ways. It means building strategic relationships not as manipulation, but as recognition that humans are social creatures whose decisions reflect relationship networks more than objective assessment. It means making your work visible, not through arrogance, but through strategic communication, ensuring that those who control opportunities understand what you contribute. Most fundamentally, it means abandoning the belief that the world should reward you for suffering in silence and accepting that success requires active participation in the social and political dimensions of organizational life, dimensions that exist whether you acknowledge them or not. The geography of opportunity reveals itself as fundamentally unequal once you abandon the fiction that talent and effort naturally rise to appropriate levels, exposing a landscape where position matters infinitely more than ability for determining outcomes. Machiavelli observed that fortune is the arbiter of one half of our actions, but leaves the other half to be controlled by ourselves. Yet most people focus exclusively on the half they control, while ignoring the half that determines whether their efforts bear fruit. You can possess exceptional skills in a dying industry, work with incredible dedication in a stagnant organization, demonstrate remarkable competence in a role that senior leadership never sees. Your effort remains constant, but your results vary wildly based on factors you never chose, structural positions you inherited rather than earned. This recognition dissolves the comfortable belief that your current circumstances reflect primarily your choices and capabilities, forcing confrontation with the role of contingency, inheritance, and systemic advantage in shaping life trajectories. The child born into wealth receives superior education, nutritious food, stable housing, professional networks, and financial buffers that transform mistakes into learning opportunities rather than catastrophes. The child born into poverty receives none of these advantages, yet is told that hard work can overcome structural disadvantage, that dedication can substitute for capital, that personal responsibility somehow neutralizes inherited inequality. Machiavelli would recognize this as masterful political theater, convincing the disadvantaged that their position reflects personal failure while disguising how thoroughly systems are structured to reproduce existing hierarchies across generations. The actual mechanisms of social mobility operate far more narrowly than mythology suggests, concentrated in specific fields, specific organizations, specific geographic locations that most people never access regardless of their capabilities. You can work extraordinarily hard in a small town with limited economic opportunity and achieve far less than someone working moderately in a major metropolitan center, where chance encounters and casual connections lead to transformative opportunities. The brilliant student at an unknown university faces barriers that the mediocre one at an elite institution never encounters, not because the latter possesses superior abilities, but because institutional prestige opens doors that talent alone cannot. Machiavelli understood that the prince's virtue matters far less than whether circumstances allow that virtue to flourish. That timing and positioning determine outcomes more than character or capability. This insight proves particularly devastating for those who invested years believing that mastery alone would ensure success, who developed deep expertise in domains where expertise is abundant, while neglecting the social and political dimensions that differentiate who rises within those domains. The world contains millions of skilled programmers, competent managers, talented writers, capable analysts. What distinguishes those who succeed from those who struggle is rarely the quality of their work, but rather their proximity to opportunity, their visibility to decision makers, their positioning within networks where resources and recognition flow. Machiavelli noted that the prince who relies entirely on fortune is lost when fortune changes, and the worker who relies entirely on skill faces identical vulnerability when the market for that skill becomes saturated or when technological change renders expertise obsolete. The geographic dimension of this trap reveals itself in how opportunity concentrates in specific locations, while propaganda about remote work and digital nomadism obscures continuing advantages of physical proximity to power centers. The startup founder in Silicon Valley has access to capital, talent, mentorship, and serendipitous connections that the equally capable founder in a secondary market cannot replicate through video calls and online networking. The ambitious professional in New York or London encounters opportunities through casual social interactions that never arise for the isolated one working remotely, no matter how excellent their actual work product. Machiavelli understood that being in the room where decisions happen matters more than deserving to be in that room. That proximity to power creates opportunities that virtue alone cannot generate. The psychological burden of recognizing these dynamics proves almost unbearable for those who built their identity around meritocratic beliefs, who need to believe that the world operates justly in order to maintain their sense that effort matters and that their struggles have meaning. Accepting that position matters more than effort requires surrendering the narrative that made your suffering tolerable, admitting that you may have worked incredibly hard in circumstances structurally designed to minimize returns on that labor. Machiavelli offers no comfort here, no suggestion that the universe balances accounts or that cosmic justice eventually prevails. He simply points to what is demonstrably true and invites you to make decisions based on reality rather than wishful thinking. The strategic implication is that optimizing your position matters at least as much as optimizing your performance. That where you play determines outcomes more than how well you play. This means actively seeking environments where your particular capabilities are scarce rather than abundant, where decision makers can directly observe your contributions, where networks exist that can accelerate your trajectory in ways that isolated excellence never could. It means being willing to sacrifice immediate compensation or status for positioning that creates asymmetric opportunity, understanding that a junior role in a rapidly growing company or a visibility-generating project may matter more than a senior role in stagnant circumstances. Machiavelli's prince understands that sometimes retreating to defensible ground matters more than holding indefensible territory, that strategic positioning enables future victories that current stubbornness prevents. The hardest truth remains that for many people, no amount of repositioning will overcome the structural disadvantages they inherited, that Machiavelli's insights primarily benefit those who already possess minimum thresholds of advantage. The person trapped by geography, family obligations, health constraints, or economic necessity cannot simply move to opportunity, cannot freely choose positioning, cannot access the networks that generate asymmetric returns. This recognition does not invalidate Machiavellian analysis, but rather completes it, revealing how systems maintain themselves by offering mobility to enough people to sustain belief in meritocracy, while structurally ensuring that most remain trapped. Understanding the game does not guarantee winning it, but continuing to play while misunderstanding the rules guarantees losing it. The temporal dimension of this trap manifests in how hard work consumes the present while promising rewards in a future that never quite arrives, a psychological mechanism that Machiavelli would recognize as the foundation of stable political control. You sacrifice today for tomorrow, endure current suffering for promised future compensation, delay gratification in service of goals that recede perpetually over the horizon. The organization asks for one more year of dedication before promotion, one more project before recognition, one more sacrifice before reward. The years accumulate while the promised moment of arrival continues to drift further away, and you interpret this pattern as personal failure rather than systemic design, believing that surely the next milestone will finally produce the transformation that all previous ones somehow did not. This mechanism proves particularly effective because it exploits your capacity for hope and your investment in narratives that make current suffering meaningful. Machiavelli observed that men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. The deception here is subtle, not a specific false promise, but rather a general belief system that encourages infinite deferral of satisfaction, that reframes exploitation as character building, that convinces you to mortgage decades of your finite life for vague promises about eventual payoff. The brilliant insight of modern work culture is that it never needs to deliver on these promises because you internalize the belief that failure to arrive means insufficient effort rather than impossible destination. Consider how retirement functions within this framework, the ultimate deferral, the final promise that keeps workers compliant across entire lifetimes. You sacrifice your health, your relationships, your present enjoyment in order to accumulate resources for a future period of leisure and security. Yet that future moment, if it arrives at all, comes when your body is degraded, your energy depleted, your capacity for adventure and experience diminished by decades of grinding subordination. Machiavelli would observe that this represents a masterstroke of political engineering, convincing people to trade their most vital years for scraps in their declining ones, all while maintaining their belief that this arrangement represents prudent planning rather than systematic exploitation. The powerful enjoy their youth while controlling your labor, then enjoy their maturity while you finally access diminished rewards, ensuring they win at every stage while you perpetually wait for your turn. The deadline-driven nature of modern work intensifies this trap, creating artificial urgency that prevents strategic thinking and ensures reactive rather than proactive existence. You lurch from crisis to crisis, from deadline to deadline, always responding to immediate pressures, without time to consider whether the path you are racing down leads anywhere you actually want to go. Machiavelli understood that keeping subjects busy and preoccupied prevents them from considering whether their circumstances serve their interests, that manufactured urgency functions as a control mechanism more effective than overt force. The person who works 80-hour weeks has no mental space to question why they are working 80-hour weeks, no energy to consider alternative arrangements, no capacity to build toward anything beyond survival of the immediate demand. This temporal trap interacts devastatingly with the positional trap, as years invested in a particular path create sunk cost attachments that make pivoting feel impossibly wasteful. You cannot easily abandon a career you spent a decade building, cannot readily walk away from expertise you developed through years of sacrifice, cannot lightly dismiss the identity you constructed around your professional role. Machiavelli noted that men are quicker to forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony, and your invested time represents a patrimony you protect irrationally, continuing to pour effort into directions that demonstrably do not serve you, because abandoning them means admitting that years of your life were misdirected. The trap tightens as time passes, as options narrow, as the gap between where you are and where you hope to be grows wider. The psychological mechanism underlying this trap involves how humans experience time inconsistently, overvaluing the present when making plans, but then experiencing that future as an equally pressing present when it arrives. You accept terrible working conditions today because you imagine your future self will somehow be immune to suffering, that the person you become will not mind the sacrifices you are making now. But that future person is you, experiencing their present with the same immediacy you experience this one, and the suffering you are deferring remains suffering regardless of when it occurs. Machiavelli's realism cuts through these self-deceptions, insisting that you acknowledge that there is only ever now, that the life you are living today is the life you are living, that promises about tomorrow function primarily to make today's exploitation tolerable. The strategic response requires breaking the deferral cycle, insisting that your life today matters as much as your imagined life tomorrow, that present quality of existence cannot be infinitely sacrificed for hypothetical future rewards. This means making decisions based on whether your current circumstances are tolerable and desirable rather than whether they might eventually lead somewhere better. It means abandoning sunk cost reasoning and evaluating paths based on where they actually go rather than how much you have already invested in them. It means recognizing that time is your most finite resource, that years you surrender cannot be reclaimed, that your life is happening now, regardless of what stories you tell yourself about future compensation. Machiavelli offers no hope that the world will reward your patience, only the clear-eyed assessment that you are making choices about how to spend your limited time, and that those choices should reflect your actual interests rather than narratives designed to keep you compliant. The knowledge dimension of this trap reveals how expertise itself becomes a prison, trapping you in domains where you possess capabilities while preventing exploration of territories where your ignorance might paradoxically advantage you. Machiavelli observed that the prince who wants to maintain his state is often forced to do evil, and the worker who wants to transcend their circumstances must often abandon the identity they have carefully constructed through years of specialization. Your expertise in a particular domain creates both competence and constraint, making you valuable within specific contexts while rendering you invisible or irrelevant outside them. The years you invested becoming expert in dying technologies or declining industries do not transfer cleanly to emerging opportunities, leaving you simultaneously overqualified and underqualified, trapped by knowledge that the market no longer rewards. This dynamic intensifies in an era of rapid technological change where expertise depreciates faster than it can be acquired, where the half-life of specific skills continues to shorten while the meritocratic narrative insists that education and training will save you. You spend years mastering tools that become obsolete, developing capabilities that automation renders worthless, accumulating knowledge that markets suddenly decide they no longer need. Machiavelli would recognize this as fortune overwhelming virtue, as circumstances changing faster than individuals can adapt, as the futility of trying to succeed through pure capability when the ground itself keeps shifting. The person who studied industrial manufacturing watched jobs disappear overseas. The one who mastered routine cognitive work watches artificial intelligence eliminate their role. The one who built a career on stable employment watches gig economy, casualization destroy job security. The educational system intensifies this trap by training you for legibility rather than capability, teaching you to perform in ways that institutions can measure and credential rather than developing capacities that create actual value. Machiavelli understood that princes maintain power by controlling what counts as legitimate knowledge, that the ability to define expertise allows the powerful to gatekeep opportunity while appearing meritocratic. Your credentials signal submission to institutional evaluation processes more than they demonstrate competence, yet you are told these credentials are essential for advancement, that without them, you cannot access opportunities regardless of what you can actually do. The system thus extracts years of your life and enormous financial resources in exchange for permission slips that primarily benefit those who control the gatekeeping mechanisms. Consider how specialization fragments knowledge in ways that benefit organizations rather than individuals. How becoming expert in narrow domains makes you valuable but replaceable. How general competence that might allow independent action gets suppressed in favor of specific capabilities that require organizational context to deploy. Machiavelli noted that the prince must avoid being despised and hated, and organizations similarly structure work to prevent individuals from accumulating power that might threaten managerial control. They divide tasks so that no single person understands the complete process. They hoard strategic information while demanding tactical transparency. They structure dependencies so that your expertise only matters within their specific context. Your knowledge thus becomes a gilded cage, valuable enough to seem like success, but circumscribed enough to prevent genuine independence. The irony multiplies when you recognize that many people who succeed dramatically possess less expertise than you do, but better understanding of how to leverage whatever knowledge they have. Machiavelli observed that it is better to be impetuous than cautious, because fortune is a woman who, to be kept under, must be beaten and roughly handled. The person who acts confidently with limited knowledge often outperforms the expert who understands too much to move decisively, because markets reward action and positioning more than they reward pure competence. The expert sees all the complexities and edge cases and potential failures, becoming paralyzed by knowledge, while the confident, ignorant person simplifies ruthlessly and moves fast, sometimes succeeding through sheer momentum and luck, where careful expertise would have predicted only failure. This suggests a paradoxical relationship between knowledge and success, where too much understanding of a domain can trap you in that domain's limitations, while naive optimism allows exploration of possibilities that expertise would preemptively dismiss. Machiavelli's prince succeeds not through being the most knowledgeable, but through being the most strategically positioned, not through mastering every detail, but through understanding which details matter for shaping perception and building power. The worker who succeeds similarly understands that expertise matters far less than visibility, that knowing the right people trumps knowing the right things, that strategic ignorance that preserves optionality can outperform specialized knowledge that narrows possibilities. The psychological weight of this recognition proves crushing for those who invested years becoming expert, who constructed identities around their specialized knowledge, who need to believe that their expertise matters, because abandoning that belief means admitting that their life's work possesses less value than they imagined. Machiavelli offers no false comfort here, no suggestion that the universe owes you return on your investment in knowledge, no promise that expertise will eventually be recognized and rewarded. He simply points to the observable fact that success depends on factors beyond competence, that markets are indifferent to your suffering, that the years you spent acquiring expertise do not entitle you to outcomes beyond what that expertise can actually command in current circumstances. The strategic implication suggests investing in adaptability over depth, in networks over knowledge, in positioning over perfection. This does not mean abandoning expertise, but rather recognizing its limitations, understanding that your knowledge creates options only when combined with other factors like visibility, relationships, and strategic timing. It means being willing to abandon expertise that markets no longer reward, rather than clinging to it through nostalgia or identity attachment. It means understanding that in a rapidly changing world, the capacity to learn quickly matters more than what you currently know, that flexibility trumps specialization, that the meta skill of positioning yourself advantageously exceeds the value of any particular domain expertise. Machiavelli's lesson remains constant. Understand the actual game being played, adapt to circumstances as they exist rather than as you wish them to be, and recognize that your virtue only matters when fortune provides the circumstances for it to flourish. The social dimension of this trap manifests in how hard work isolates you from the networks and relationships that actually determine who rises, creating a vicious cycle where dedication to craft prevents development of social capital that would amplify that craft's impact. Machiavelli observed that a prince ought to take care never to make an alliance with one more powerful than himself to attack others, and the worker who focuses exclusively on output while neglecting relationships makes themselves perpetually subordinate to those who understand that power flows through connection rather than competence. You remain in your office perfecting deliverables while others have drinks with decision makers. You skip social events to meet deadlines while others build alliances over casual conversations. You pride yourself on not playing politics while others who play politics determine your opportunities and trajectory. This dynamic reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of how organizations and markets actually function, treating them as meritocratic evaluation systems when they are actually social networks where trust, familiarity, and relationship determine outcomes more than objective performance. The person who gets the promotion is rarely the most qualified, but rather the one whose name comes to mind when opportunities arise, who has built relationships with those who control opportunities, who has made themselves visible and memorable through social interaction rather than silent competence. Machiavelli understood that being feared is better than being loved if you cannot be both, but being unknown is worse than either, rendering you invisible to those who allocate resources and opportunities regardless of what you can actually deliver. Consider how the language of work valorizes a social dedication, how being a team player paradoxically means sacrificing the social time that would allow you to build meaningful relationships, how organizations celebrate those who stay late working alone, while actual advancement goes to those who left early to have dinner with the right people. This represents another masterstroke of control, encouraging you to behave in ways that feel virtuous while ensuring you never develop the social capital that could threaten existing hierarchies. Machiavelli would recognize this as brilliant political engineering, using your own values against you, making your dedication to craft the very mechanism that prevents you from advancing within systems that reward social maneuvering over isolated excellence. The networking dimension of modern professional life makes this trap particularly insidious because it disguises political activity as casual socializing, making relationship building seem optional or frivolous rather than essential infrastructure for career development. You think you are being principled by avoiding office politics when you are actually being naive about how decisions get made, who gets considered for opportunities, how information flows through organizations. The person who has coffee with colleagues is not wasting time, but building the social capital that will determine whether they get tapped for interesting projects, whether they hear about opportunities before they are posted, whether they have advocates when promotion discussions happen. Machiavelli noted that the prince's reputation must be carefully maintained through both deeds and words, and your reputation within an organization depends far more on social relationships than on the quality of work that most people never directly observe. The psychology of this trap involves how introverted or craft-focused individuals convince themselves that their disdain for social performance reflects principled authenticity when it actually reflects strategic blindness to how advancement mechanisms work. You label relationship building as superficial when it is actually fundamental. You dismiss networking as fake when it is actually how trust gets established. You avoid self-promotion as arrogant when it is actually necessary for visibility in environments where nobody naturally tracks your contributions. Machiavelli observed that the prince who seeks to deceive will always find those ready to be deceived, and you deceive yourself about the nature of professional success. pretending that quality alone matters, because accepting that relationships matter would require behavioral changes you find uncomfortable or distasteful. The class dimension of this dynamic reveals itself in how those from privileged backgrounds possess advantages in social capital acquisition that hard work cannot overcome. They learned professional social skills from educated parents. They have existing networks through family connections. They possess the cultural capital that makes them comfortable in elite spaces. They understand the unwritten rules of professional behavior through osmosis rather than painful trial and error. The person who grew up working class brings none of these advantages, must learn social codes that others absorb naturally, must overcome deficits in confident self-presentation that reflect learned behaviors from environments where assertiveness was punished rather than rewarded. Machiavelli would observe that fortune and family circumstances matter enormously, that virtue alone cannot overcome certain structural disadvantages, that the playing field was never level regardless of what meritocratic mythology suggests. The strategic response requires acknowledging that relationships are not optional extras, but fundamental infrastructure, that social capital creates opportunities that competence alone cannot generate. This means intentionally investing time in building relationships, even when it feels like time stolen from productive work. Understanding that coffee conversations and casual interactions often matter more than the work you skip to have them. It means learning to make yourself visible and memorable, to communicate your value rather than assuming it will be naturally recognized, to build advocates who will recommend you in rooms you cannot enter. It means recognizing that every interaction is an opportunity to shape how others perceive and remember you, that professional success is a social phenomenon more than a technical one, that those who understand this dynamic rise, while those who ignore it wonder why their excellent work never translates into advancement. Machiavelli's prince builds alliances strategically, maintains relationships carefully, understands that power flows through networks of mutual obligation rather than individual capability, and these lessons apply perfectly to the supposedly meritocratic world of modern work. The final dimension of this trap reveals itself in how hard work prevents the strategic thinking and risk-taking that genuine advancement requires, trapping you in optimizing tactics while others shape strategy, in perfecting execution while others change the game entirely. Machiavelli observed that he who becomes a prince through the favor of the people ought to keep them friendly, and this he can easily do, seeing they only ask not to be oppressed by him. But the one who becomes prince through the favor of nobles has more difficulty because he finds himself surrounded by many who believe themselves to be his equals. The hard worker remains tactical, executing tasks assigned by others, perfecting processes within frameworks others designed, while those who understand power operate strategically, positioning themselves to define what tasks matter, to set the frameworks within which others operate. This distinction between tactical excellence and strategic positioning explains why many extraordinarily capable people never advance beyond middle management, while less capable ones become executives, why brilliant technical experts remain contributors while mediocre generalists become leaders. The trap is that perfecting tactical execution makes you valuable in your current role, incentivizing organizations to keep you there, while strategic thinking requires abandoning what you are good at to explore territories where you lack expertise. Machiavelli understood that sometimes the prince must abandon secure positions to seize opportunities, that those who cling to what they know often lose to those willing to risk what they have for what they might gain, that fortune favors those who adapt to changing circumstances rather than those who perfect responses to circumstances that no longer exist. Consider how the daily grind of hard work prevents the kind of reflective, strategic thinking that might reveal you are on the wrong path entirely. That your entire approach is optimized for a game that does not serve your interests. You are too busy executing to step back and ask whether execution matters, too exhausted to consider alternatives, too invested in your current trajectory to admit it might lead nowhere worth going. Machiavelli would recognize this as a form of control through busyness, keeping subjects so occupied with immediate demands that they never consider whether serving those demands serves their own interests. The organization loves your dedication because it prevents exactly the kind of strategic thinking that might lead you to recognize you are being exploited, that might motivate you to leave or demand different terms, that might threaten the arrangements that benefit from your tireless execution. The risk dimension proves particularly important because genuine advancement often requires betting your security on uncertain outcomes, taking jobs that might fail, starting ventures that might collapse, making moves that risk your current position for uncertain future gains. Machiavelli observed that fortune is the friend of young men because they are less cautious, more violent, and command her with more audacity. The person trapped in hard work becomes progressively more risk-averse as they accumulate obligations and diminishing time horizons, more desperate to protect what little security they have achieved, less willing to gamble on strategic repositioning when tactical grinding at least produces some predictable return. This risk aversion ensures you remain trapped, unable to make the bets that genuine advancement requires, optimizing locally while missing global opportunities. The entrepreneurial dimension of this trap reveals how employment itself becomes a prison for many people whose capabilities exceed what organizations will ever recognize or reward, who possess potential that employment structures systematically suppress. Machiavelli understood that princes who have their state by their own arms and ability acquire with difficulty but hold with ease, while those who acquire through fortune or the favor of others find the acquisition easy but maintenance difficult. The person who builds their own venture rather than serving someone else's vision may struggle initially but retains far more control over their trajectory, while the employee who rises through organizational hierarchies discovers that each level brings new constraints, new political complexities, new limitations on their autonomy and agency. Yet entrepreneurship requires exactly the resources that hard work depletes, the financial cushion that grinding employment prevents you from building, the energy and creativity that exhaustion destroys, the social capital that isolation from networking prevents you from developing. The trap thus becomes complete. Employment prevents you from developing what you would need to escape employment. Your dedication to surviving within the system prevents you from building capacity to leave the system. Your grinding present prevents you from creating the future you claim to want. Machiavelli would observe that this represents the essential mechanism of stable political control, structuring circumstances so that subjects cannot develop capacity to threaten the existing order, keeping them sufficiently comfortable to prevent revolution, but sufficiently constrained to prevent genuine autonomy. The ideological dimension manifests in how hard work gets valorized as virtue precisely because it serves power while feeling like resistance. How your dedication to excellence feels like rebellion against mediocrity while actually functioning as perfect compliance with systems that need your devotion to their preservation. Machiavelli understood that the best fortress is to not be hated by the people. And modern systems ensure this by making workers complicit in their own exploitation through belief systems that frame servitude as virtue, that transform structural advantage into personal merit, that convince you to blame yourself for positions that were never designed to allow your advancement. Your hard work is not virtue, but a trap, not character, but conditioning. Not strength, but the mechanism ensuring your continued subordination. The liberation that Machiavelli offers in this final recognition is the possibility of choosing differently, of abandoning the grinding present for strategic positioning, of accepting that genuine advancement requires risks that hard work alone can never produce. This means being willing to trade security for opportunity, to bet on yourself, rather than optimizing within systems designed to extract your labor while minimizing your returns. To recognize that the path you are on leads exactly where it appears to lead, and that continuing to walk it faster will not change the destination. It means understanding that hard work is not the opposite of laziness, but often the opposite of strategic thinking. That grinding away at tasks prevents the reflective space necessary to recognize you should be doing different tasks entirely. That your dedication to proving your worth through effort is exactly what ensures you never have to be valued for anything else. Machiavelli invites you to see the game clearly, to understand that princes do not rise through grinding, but through positioning. Not through perfecting execution, but through changing what execution means. Not through working harder than everyone else, but through understanding that hardness of work matters infinitely less than strategicness of position, timing, and relationship. What Machiavelli revealed 5 centuries ago remains carefully concealed behind every motivational poster about hard work. Behind every commencement speech about dedication, behind every corporate value statement celebrating tireless effort. The game you thought you were playing does not exist, and your devotion to non-existent rules ensures victory for those who abandoned those rules the moment they understood the actual mechanics of power. They needed you to believe in meritocracy so thoroughly that you would never look up from your grinding to notice how consistently success flows to those who positioned themselves strategically rather than worked themselves exhausted. The uncomfortable truth is that your hardest working years may have been your most exploited ones, that your suffering built someone else's empire while you waited for rewards that were never going to arrive, that every hour you sacrificed to prove your worth was an hour you could have spent understanding and positioning yourself within the systems that actually determine outcomes. The psychological burden of this recognition cannot be understated. The vertigo of realizing that frameworks you organized your entire life around may be fundamentally inaccurate, that values you took as eternal truths were actually carefully implanted by those who benefit from your belief in them. Machiavelli offers no comfort here, no promise that the universe will eventually compensate your suffering, no suggestion that cosmic justice operates beneath the surface of apparent injustice. He simply presents what he observed to be true about how power actually moves through human systems, how some rise while others remain trapped, how appearance matters more than reality and perception shapes fortune more than substance ever could. The question before you is not whether this truth is pleasant, but whether you possess the courage to see it clearly and the strategic intelligence to act on it, to abandon comfortable myths for uncomfortable realities, to recognize that the years ahead will resemble the years behind unless you change not how hard you work, but how strategically you position yourself. Your options narrow with each passing year as obligations accumulate and energy depletes, as risk tolerance diminishes and exit options close. The strategic repositioning that might transform your trajectory becomes progressively harder as time passes, yet delaying makes it no easier, only less possible. Machiavelli understood that princes must act when circumstances allow. That hesitation creates vulnerability, that those who wait for perfect conditions never move while the world moves around them. If you recognize yourself in this analysis, if you see your grinding present leading to a grinding future, if you understand finally that your dedication is being exploited rather than rewarded, then the moment to change course is now rather than later, to risk security for opportunity rather than optimizing within a system designed to ensure your subordination. The hard workers will remain hard workers, will continue believing that surely the next promotion or the next milestone will finally produce the transformation they have been promised, will grind themselves into dust while wondering why others rise. The question is whether you will be one of them. The path Machiavelli illuminates is not easy, but it is honest, not comforting, but it is clear. Not what you hope to hear, but it is what you need to understand if genuine change is your goal, rather than perpetual hoping. He teaches that power flows to those who understand it, rather than those who deserve it. That success requires strategic positioning, more than moral virtue. That the world operates on principles very different from those we wish governed it. Your hard work becomes valuable only when combined with visibility, relationships, positioning, and timing, when embedded within strategies that amplify effort rather than simply extracting it. The worker who understands this transcends the trap, who sees that the game being played is not the game being described, who recognizes finally that princes do not grind, but position themselves to make grinding unnecessary. That those at the top work differently rather than harder. That success is a performance observed by others rather than a virtue practiced in isolation. The final question is whether this knowledge liberates or paralyzes you, whether understanding the game allows you to play it more effectively or simply reveals how thoroughly you have already lost. Machiavelli believed that understanding truth creates options, that clear sight enables strategic action, that those who see reality as it is possess advantages over those who see it as they wish it were. The trap only works when you do not recognize it as a trap. When you mistake your grinding for virtue rather than exploitation, when you blame yourself for structural positions that were never designed to allow your advancement. Recognition breaks the spell, allows you to choose differently, creates the possibility that the years ahead might look different from the years behind. But recognition alone changes nothing unless followed by action, by strategic repositioning, by willingness to abandon what you know for what you might become, by courage to bet on yourself, rather than continuing to serve systems that will never value you as highly as you value yourself. If these words resonated, if you recognized yourself in this analysis, if you felt the uncomfortable truth behind comfortable myths finally acknowledged, then perhaps you will share this perspective with others who remain trapped in beliefs that do not serve them. Leave your thoughts in the comments, describing your own experience of discovering that hard work alone was never going to be enough. Your moment of recognizing that the game operates on rules very different from those you were taught. Subscribe to continue exploring these uncomfortable truths, these Machiavellian insights into how power actually operates beneath its moral disguises, these analyses that name what everyone sees but few dare acknowledge. The trap persists because people protect it, because workers police each other's belief in meritocracy, because admitting the game is rigged feels like admitting you have been a fool. But recognizing truth is never foolish, and the first step toward liberation is naming your prison clearly, seeing its bars without denial or wishful thinking, understanding finally that your hard work was never the problem, only your belief that hard work alone would ever be the solution.